Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of College Hockey Talk. I'm joined here today by former Minnesota Gopher women's hockey player and national champion, Sophie Skarzynski. Sophie, welcome to the podcast, and how's everything going?
It's going well. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for hosting. I saw that you've had a couple different Gophers already, so excited to be joining them.
Yeah, and how's your quarantine going, and what have you been doing to stay busy and pass the time throughout these past few months? I know it's been crazy.
Yeah, so I coach, like pre-COVID. I was on the ice still once or twice a week with the Mission, with actually the Mission boys team. So they are right near me at MB, right near the United Center in the city of Chicago. So that switched. So I've gotten really into Peloton. I still have my day job, so I still work my 9 to 5. Um, and I feel fortunate. I feel comfortable traveling. So I've been doing a little bit of traveling, obviously in the safest way possible, to Colorado and Arizona and Florida here and there. So been doing a lot of that.
Well, that's good to hear, and I want to start off this podcast talking about before you went to Minnesota, just about the beginning of your hockey career. You're from Illinois. Talk about growing up there, and how did you start playing hockey and falling in love with the sport?
Yeah, so I am one of 6 kids. I have 3 older brothers, an older sister, and a little sister. I know my Minnesota teammates are familiar, but I don't know if other people are. So my 3 older brothers, they all played hockey. My older sister started a little later, but so my whole family was a hockey family. So I got into it because of my brothers, and I played boys hockey until I was 13, basically until it got quote unquote too dangerous because they all got huge and I was still smaller. So I played for the Chicago Young Americans. So in Minnesota, you play for your high school team, but in Chicago or in the whole state of Illinois, in order to play in a competitive league, you play for the AAA travel team. So I played for CYA boys, and then I switched to the girls program at the Chicago Mission because it's the best of the best. They're notoriously known for like pumping out D1 athletes, D1 players for both the guys and girls side. And at that time, I had known that Megan Bozak played for the Mission. So she was a Minnesota Gopher, an All-American, a national champion, an Olympian. So I knew that Megan had played there. So even though it was about an hour and a half from my house, it was a big commute. I ended up switching to the Chicago Mission for girls. So I played there, and most of my like closest friends from high school actually aren't from my high school. They're from, or my high school years, I should say. They're not from my high school. They're from the Mission because I spent more time at the rink than in class sometimes because I was missing so much school for travel. And so that's a little bit about my kind of youth hockey experience, and my family and my brothers played a big role in it just because my dad was building a rink for us as soon as the temperature dropped in our backyard. And I always joke, but I don't even know if it's really a joke because it's true. My oldest brothers would put like a little kid's chair on the ice for me to sit on, and then they would pull it out from under me. And that's kind of how I learned how to skate because I had to learn how to get up. So I credit a lot of like my early learning to them, and my parents for building that rink. That's really where I spent most of my winters during my childhood and starting into hockey. It was out on the outdoor rink.
Did you have like a favorite player growing up, and how do you model your game after their game?
Okay, so my favorite player, I mean, I looked up a lot to Megan Bozak. She played with my older brother Luke because she played boys hockey too. I should say she played against Luke. Um, So I looked up to her a lot. She was just a stud of a defenseman. And then I always grew up going to the Angela Ruggiero youth hockey camp. She was a 3-time Olympian, if not 4, I can't remember correctly. And I went to her hockey camp starting, I was still playing boys hockey. I think the first one I went to, I was like 9 or 10 years old. And I hadn't fully understood that like I couldn't go to the NHL because I was a girl, and that like the be all end all for me was the Olympics at that point, because I saw Angela and she brought her medals and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. So her and Bozak. And then in terms of like my NHL favorite players, I love Ovechkin, even though I'm a diehard Blackhawks fan. I just think he's so talented and he has such good vision on the ice. And then I would say also, I mean, I love Tazen, I love Kane. Duncan Keith's one of my favorite defensemen. Um, and then Patrick Sharp, he's retired now, but one of my favorite forwards to watch, especially growing up with the 2010 and 2013 and 2015 titles for the Blackhawks. That was really fun.
Yeah, as a Bruins fan, that 23 hurts a little bit, but we won't
Oh
have to go
shoot,
into that.
yeah.
But no, I love Patrick Sharp. Love watching him on NBC. He does a great job broadcasting. So hopefully I can be with him one day in the future. That's just a little side note of myself. But you grew up in a hockey family, and your sister Greta plays college hockey for Yale. Talk about growing up in that hockey environment. And how does that help your hockey development as a player? And do you ever talk to your sister about college hockey and try to help her and with her development as well?
Yeah, it was so fun. So yes, my little sister is, she's actually taken a gap year. We're calling it her COVID gap year, which I think was the best thing for her. Proud of her for that decision. When she returns for the 2021-2022 season, she'll be the captain at Yale. So I'm super proud of her. And we grew up playing together. We stopped playing together when I made the CYA boys team. Um, and then she eventually came over when she stopped playing boys. She came over to the girls' teams at the Chicago Mission as well. So we literally grew up playing hockey together. Um, in terms of us talking about college hockey, we never really spoke about like college hockey in general. It was just something that we both like understood. Like we both knew that that was our goal. We wanted to play college hockey. We wanted to be D1 college hockey players. I think in a perfect world, um, maybe we would have loved to play college hockey together. But I think the best thing that ever happened to Greta and I was that we went on our own paths. I have no connection to Yale. She doesn't have connection to Minnesota, and I think her not having me at Yale really let her kind of blaze her own trail. I think she's a better skater than I am. She's definitely faster than me. But it was really fun because my junior year, I actually got pulled up to forward. And so that was when she was a first year at Yale. And we both had really good seasons that year in terms of points. I wasn't notorious or known for like generating a lot of points my first 2 years at Minnesota. But of course that was the Olympic year. So I was switched into a new role, and she like was freshman of the year out east. Like she was so good in the Ivy League. So that was really fun to kind of battle with her in a healthy way. And then, my senior year, Yale hosted Minnesota, so my whole family flew out there. That was great. I think my parents were really excited, but they didn't know who to cheer for. Um, and then in terms of like my brothers and my older sister could have played in college, but she chose not to. Which again, great path for her. She ended up going to school out west where it was warm. And then my three older brothers, my oldest one played college hockey at Middlebury. And then my other two went to undergrad at University of Chicago and ended up joining the military. So everyone had their own path, but hockey was formative in kind of the bond we all have with each other. Um, and then I have like vivid memories of my oldest brother, Luke, like 90-degree summer heat of Chicago. He would put hockey tape in the alley and make like ladders so that we could train on my agility. So that was really fun, training with them. And then Greta and I, throughout college and high school, would do on ice training together, but also we had the same off ice trainer for like weightlifting and conditioning. So that was fun too.
Yeah, and you mentioned before you played for the Chicago Mission. Talk about your experience with that team and how did it prepare you for college hockey?
Yeah, so the mission was the reason I had like such a great foundation going into college hockey at Minnesota. I feel really fortunate that one, I was able to play at that program, but two, I was lucky because a lot of parents. So I grew up living in the northern burbs, and the Chicago Mission ice rink. It now moved to MB Ice Arena where the Blackhawks play in the city, but it used to be in Woodridge. So it was like I said, an hour and a half. So my mom or dad would drive like and give up 5 to 6 hours of their day, like 3 or 5 times a week. So I had really, really great parents that saw how great the Chicago Mission program was for developing hockey players and were like, okay, we're going to do this. So one, I was able to fully commit to it because I was literally at the rink. I was there every day, if not every other day, maybe not Sundays, but that was in part because we were maybe on the road traveling. you're just surrounded by really great teammates, but then also the coaches there on both the guys and the girls side are very encouraging. They know how to develop players. They also know like the ins and outs of recruiting, and recruiting can be a really intimidating process, especially for how early some girls decide to commit to university. I committed my junior year, November, like right before Thanksgiving, to Minnesota, and I thought that was early. Meanwhile, as I went to college, I heard about like eighth graders and freshmen who like haven't even gotten their permit to drive committing to university. So mission at large not only is great for like the family and the culture of the Chicago mission, but developing players, they have the coaches to do it, and they also have the knowledge of like the ins and outs of recruiting, things you should look for in a college, a college coach and a culture, and things you want to stray away from. So I feel like I was really lucky to play there for so long.
Yeah, and you also played for Team USA, the U18 team for the World Championship. So talk about the process for getting selected on that team, and you won a gold medal at that tournament. What emotions were you feeling after winning that medal? It must mean a lot to you, especially getting the chance to represent your country on that type of national stage.
Yeah, I felt very fortunate for that opportunity. I know not everyone has that opportunity. For me, I was lucky because I was part of the USA Hockey like national camp program. I think the first time I went, or like the first time you're eligible, is like eighth grade. So I went eighth grade year, and then I made the team the first time my junior year. So I'm very young for my age. I started college when I was 17. So I made that team when I was 15 years old, the U18 team, and then had my first world tournament. When would that have been? Yeah, that was in Budapest, Hungary. So that was super fun. We ended up losing to Canada in the final game, but still a great experience. And then my senior year, that was my favorite because that was stateside. That was in Buffalo, and we won in overtime. Jinsey Dunn had the overtime goal. It was so exciting. And my grandfather could come, and my grandfather's like, he's one of my biggest supporters. So he always was at my games, college and youth. He didn't come to Budapest, but he had come to Buffalo. So the experience at large, it was great. Anytime you get to throw on the USA Hockey jersey, and that's the only point in my career that I've had the USA Hockey jersey on. So I definitely enjoyed it. And in terms of like winning the gold medal, even though it was the U18 juniors, it wasn't the large scale national team. It was still a really, really great experience. And yeah, it's awesome. I mean, even though it was when I was a kid, essentially, I was only 16, 17 years old, it was still such a great experience.
Yeah, and what was it like competing against those types of competition every day during the tournament and during practices as well? Because we've talked to Jinsey Dunn before on the podcast, and just watching her as a fan, and she's such an incredible defenseman. Playing against her every day, does that help your hockey development? And how did that experience help your development, and especially help prepare you for college hockey since you're playing against a lot of D1 commits?
Yeah, so I think the first time, like I said, the first time I made that team, I was 15. So you had like the 3-game series against Canada in August. And that was like my first taste of it. Um, I think that, and then combine it with the World's tournament experience in Budapest and then the one in Buffalo. When you go to those practices and you go through the training and you go through your testing, it's a good it's a really good preparation for college for a lot of different reasons. I think the first reason is the way the U18 team operates is it's most oftentimes coached by a D1 college hockey coach. So I had Joel Johnson, who was obviously my assistant at Minnesota my senior year. And then my junior year, I had Jeff Campersall, who used to be the coach at Princeton. Now he's at Penn State. So it was a good test to see how these college hockey coaches think and how they operate. Um, so that was the first reason. And then in terms of like the competitive edge, again, the Chicago mission, like I was always competing day in and day out with great hockey players. I think my senior class, we had like, I think something crazy, like 16 girls go to D1 schools. But that being said, with that U18 level, it's just like a different level of intensity, I think, that girls bring to the ice, especially because that tournament's not long, so you're competing for ice time. So obviously we're a team and we're together, but definitely good competition on the ice there too.
Yeah, and talk about your recruiting process and why did you choose to go to Minnesota versus other schools?
Yeah, I feel really lucky in terms of the recruiting process because I was at the Chicago Mission, who knew the ins and outs of the process. I had Tom Mandarino, who is the coach of the U19 team, and then Coach Catchy, Tony Catchy. He's like a huge name for the youth hockey and USA hockey. He um, just like recently retired the past 2 years from the Mission. He still helps out now and then, but if I didn't have them, I don't think I would have enjoyed the process as much. And I was also fortunate with the offers and the opportunities presented to myself. I did my East Coast visits. I was convinced maybe I would go out east, and then I came back and I visited. I ultimately was deciding between Wisconsin and Minnesota, and I visited both, and both are outstanding programs. I think there's a lot of similarities in terms of academically what they offer, both Big Ten, great support for their athletes. So yeah, I mean, even though there's that big rivalry between Wisconsin and Minnesota, you have to respect Wisconsin no matter what. They always produce really great hockey teams, men's and women's side. So it ended up coming down between those two universities, and I chose Minnesota in part because of the culture. I feel like people talk about it a lot, the culture and the values that at the time it was Nadine Muzzerall, who now coaches at Ohio State, but it was Nadine Muzzerall, Joel Johnson, and Brad Frost. What they built there, and now Bethany Browson is there, what they've continued to build and live out. That's ultimately what attracted to me is the girls there who actually don't just like talk the talk, they walk the talk. Is that the term? And I felt like it was a little bit more of a close-knit family there. So that was ultimately what made my decision.
Yeah, what was it like playing under Brad Frost, and how did he help your hockey development as a player?
Yeah, so I think for me it was a really different experience than most people. I think this happens sometimes, but I was actually recruited as a defenseman at the University of Minnesota. But my freshman year, I was lucky enough that Amanda Kessel came back. So she came back around halfway through my season. So I was moved to forward. So rather than being coached, obviously you're coached by all three coaches, but Frosty normally runs the offense. And so I interacted with him way more versus JJ runs the defensive side of the team. And Nadine too, at that point, she ran the offense as well. So I went from really being under JJ to switching to them. So Frosty helped me my freshman year with my offensive development. So did Nadine. But then same thing my sophomore year. Unfortunately, Danny Cameronese underwent an injury, so I got moved up to forward again. So I started, I think I was defense for like literally 2 weeks. And then unfortunately, Danny had this really unfair injury. Something in her ankle. I can't remember if it was a fracture or a break, but a major injury to our offensive line. And I got moved up to forward again. And then my junior year, Taylor Williamson underwent some physical and mental challenges, I should say. She had brain surgery that year. It was very intense. And I got moved up to forward again. So in terms of my relationship with Frosty, I feel like we got closer and closer each year because I think I have more of a defensive mind. That's why I've always played defense. So I really had to adapt and learn year to year and also reset my expectations of him going in as defense, but you never know what's going to happen. So to make sure I'm versatile. And then obviously my senior year, I was defense the whole year. So I was back working with JJ day in, day out. So all three coaches, and then including Nadine for a little bit my freshman year, were crucial in my development. I think I definitely interacted more with Frosty my first 3 years than my last one, in part because I was playing more offense.
Yeah, what was the biggest investment you had to make to college hockey? Was it the mental side, making quicker decisions with the puck, or was it more the physicality, playing against players that were 4 years older than you, or for your case, switching positions constantly throughout your 4 years with Minnesota?
Yeah, I think physically, I've always been pretty big. I'm 5'8". And then with Cal Dietz in training, I gained like 15, 20 pounds of muscle, or maybe some people wouldn't say it was muscle. My freshman year, like I was pretty strong, so I didn't think physically it wasn't too much of a challenge for me. But mentally it was definitely a difference for me, and it was a struggle at first. I think it allowed me to grow up and grow up fast, going through those changes. And it was also how receptive I could be to it. Was I going to be a whiner and be like, why am I not playing defense? Or was I just going to adapt? And that's what I ultimately chose to do, which was adapt and kind of learn as you go. I think too, switching from being more of a key player at the Chicago Mission to then Minnesota, my first 2 years, I was more of like a third line grinder. So adapting to that role and accepting that as my role and owning it, and just basically like doing what I was told and living it day in, day out. So I think mentally, just like owning my new role that was given to me.
Yeah, in your freshman year, you lost to Wisconsin in the WCHA final. Talk about what you remember from that game and what was your mindset heading into the national tournament for your first year?
So I was so lucky my freshman year because of the roster that I was with. You have to think like it was Danny Cameronese, Kelly Panic, Lee Stackline, Amanda Levy, Amanda Kessel, Hannah Brandt, all these future Olympians and like all stars. I mean, Kessel had already been in the Olympics once. So as a big-eyed, I was 18 at that point, so as a big-eyed 18-year-old, I was obviously really, really upset that we had lost that game. Just because anytime you lose is bad, but especially against Wisconsin, especially in like the championship game like that. I really just was watching like their reactions. I remember seeing Kessel and thinking, it's okay. We have Kessel. It's going to be good. And just watching the way she responded, I think I learned a lot from Amanda that year, especially with everything she had overcome previously after Sochi. But her response and our key leaders like Lee Steckline, like I said, Hannah Brandt, Danny Cam, their response to the loss was how I learned. Like, okay, it sucked that we lost, but we had to move on and then prepare for the playoffs, and that's what we did. And then ended up working out in our favor because we won. So it was great.
Yeah, you got revenge against Wisconsin in the semifinals, beating them in overtime. Talk about that game and getting to eliminate one of your biggest rivals on that national stage, especially with the history you had against that team because of what happened in the WCHA final that year.
Yeah, I think like that Wisconsin's always good. They always have a stacked roster. They have great coaches. That team was so solid. Like I remember that game. It was so back and forth, so competitive. I mean, I love those are my favorite games is when we were playing Wisconsin. Um, I just remember I was on the bench and it was overtime and I was watching Sarah Potomac. I don't even know where she came from, but she just came out of nowhere and like slipped the puck away from the D. The D didn't even see her, and then I don't remember anything about that. I just remember like we all jumped on her. It was great. But that has to be one of my favorite memories of college hockey. Is I feel like the biggest thing is even when we went into overtime, like it was like there was no doubt. Like all of our leaders, again, going back to the leadership that we had that year, they were like, we got this, no doubt. So I think that was the biggest thing is if you look at championship teams and if you look at successful teams, a lot of it has to do with how do the leaders respond in adversity, and our leaders were so great that year.
Yeah, then you won your first national championship, beating Boston College. Describe the emotions you were feeling after winning your first national championship, because I feel like a lot of Gopher fans don't realize how good that BC team was that year. They were undefeated. I think when a lot of Gopher fans think about that championship run, they think about that Wisconsin game just because of the rivalry and stuff. But that BC team was very good. They had a lot of good players, and they were obviously undefeated. So just talk about playing them and winning your first national championship.
Yeah, I mean that Boston College team was so stacked. They had Alex Carpenter, they had Megan Keller. I remember going into it and we like all of the media, everyone who did interviews, I remember they were like, all they asked about was how BC is 41 or 40-0 because they, like you said, they hadn't lost a game. And we had so much respect for Boston College. One, like historically, Boston College is always really good. They have solid defense, solid forwards, and their coaching staff's like one of the best in the country. So we knew they were the best of the best. In terms of preparing for it and that feeling, I think the hardest part for our team was like making sure that we shut out what the media was saying, because it was like, they haven't lost. How are you going to beat this team that hasn't lost? And we just didn't let it get to us. Like we just focused on ourselves, and everything came to fruition. In terms of the feeling afterwards, it was very, very surreal. I had gone to Minnesota. I know I touched on like the culture and the family and the values, and that's all very true. But one of the biggest reasons I went to Minnesota was to win a national championship. I wanted to win. I wanted to hold the NCAA trophy with my teammates, and to do that my freshman year was insane. And again, like probably one of the best moments of my college hockey career. And I think my sophomore, junior, senior year, I realized that even more, getting so close to it and realizing how hard it really is to win it all.
Definitely. In your sophomore year, your team struggled in the WCHA playoffs. You beat Bemidji State in 3 games, but then unfortunately lost to Duluth in the semifinals. What do you think went wrong during that tournament, and how did you use it for that national championship run you had your sophomore season?
Yeah. So honestly, I don't really remember that WCHA series against Duluth, in part because I feel like that's a perfect example of like an athlete having to have a short memory. That did not go our way. Duluth's always been super talented. I feel like sometimes they get underestimated, but Duluth's a solid hockey program. They always have been. They always will. They recruit great players. I mean, they had Maddie Rooney. She's like one of the best goaltenders in hockey. Um, I think Duluth, I mean, from what I remember, Duluth just outplayed us that game. And then in terms of how we responded, I feel like it was evident, like in our NCAA playoffs, we had a good run. Unfortunately, it didn't go our way, but yeah, I think ultimately, like Duluth just outplayed us that series, from what I can remember. It was competitive, though. I mean, they're really, really good.
Yeah, I want to elaborate more on that national championship run. You lost to Clarkson in the Frozen Four your sophomore year. What was it like to be eliminated and lose your first big game in your college hockey career, especially against that Clarkson team who had some fantastic defensemen like Savannah Harmon and Kaylee Mercer?
I feel like I remember. So I remember my junior year of high school watching Clarkson win, and then I watched my senior year of high school Minnesota won, and then my freshman year Minnesota won, or I should say, we won. So then my sophomore year to lose to Clarkson, it was so like sour, because it was like, damn, they beat us again. But similar to what I've spoken with, like Wisconsin, Duluth, and BC, Clarkson is, I feel like rightfully so, like one of the most respected, women's college hockey programs in the country. They recruit great players, and their defense is really sound. So it was a really tough loss, but kind of it was what it was. It was a tough way to end the season, and I think that really started, especially for my class, the realization of like, okay, we wanted our freshman year and it was so hard. We cannot take that for granted. We need to make a run for the next 2 years after this.
Yeah, in your junior year, you started off the campaign playing against the Korean national team. Talk about getting to play them and grow the sport of hockey, because that seemed really fun for you guys getting to play that team.
Yeah, no, that was super cool. I think having a taste of it with like the U18 Worlds, I remember interacting with the other teams, and thinking how cool it was, like people from across the world coming together for the love of hockey. So I think it was a great experience. I think it might even been cooler for us than for them, because we've never played them before, and there were these cool, young, exciting girls wanting to talk to us about hockey and learn from each other. So that was a good experience.
Yeah, and another positive note, that year you won your first WCHA championship. Talk about that championship win, and especially seeing Taylor Williamson score that game-winning goal, especially after what she went through that season.
Yeah, I feel like a couple things about that championship is we were the underdogs that year. People were like, you don't have your Olympians, you're not going to be as good. But that was one of the most fun years of college hockey. Our team was so close, like one of the closest teams I've ever been on. Kara Piazza and Sid Baldwin did a great job leading that year. And I think, too, it was a very emotional year for everyone, specifically Taylor Williamson, like what she overcame to this day. Like, I love Taylor. Taylor is going to be one of my longtime friends. Um, what she overcame. Like, people, you saw the news articles and saw her interviews about her brain surgery and what was going on, but only us, the teammates and our coaching staff and trainers, could see all the hard work and the rehab and everything she was doing on the inside. So to have her score that goal, I can't speak. It was a really great feeling. And then even more, I was so happy it was her line mate. I think it was me, her, and Lindsay Agnew, who obviously Lindsay ended up transferring to BC the following season, but those two girls are so great. I loved playing with them. That was, again, another great moment, probably one of my favorites from my college hockey career.
Yeah, and transitioning into your senior year, what type of leadership did you want to bring in? Were you more of a vocal or lead by example type of player?
I think all of my teammates would agree I'm definitely very vocal. I love to chit chat in the locker room. I tried to do a little bit of both. Obviously, that year was my first year playing a full season at defense. So on the defensive side, um, I had great defenseman players I was with. I was with Kristen Hengler and Gracie Ostertag were the freshmen, and they were outstanding. Emily Brown, Patty Marshall, Olivia Knowles. Um, they didn't really need a ton of leading from me. They all knew how to hold their own. But in terms of how I went about it, I would say definitely vocal, but tried to lead by example as well.
Yeah, and you won the Minnesota Cup your senior year. Talk about that in-season tournament and getting the chance to win that.
Yeah, that was so fun. I think Minnesota, I think I have a unique perspective, like not being born and raised in Minnesota, the state of hockey. It is it's like the culture in Minnesota, even if you don't play high school hockey or college hockey, like you at least know how to skate. I feel like everyone does there. So the broad array of talent that exists at each university, whether it's Duluth, Bemidji, Minnesota State, or the U, it's so great, and it's awesome because the majority of those players are from the state of Minnesota. So the Minnesota Cup was just a cool experience. It was the first one. I don't recall if they did it last year. I don't think they did it this year due to COVID, but it's definitely a fun tournament to be in.
Yeah, I love talking to players from Minnesota and asking them about their hockey experience just because it's such a different hockey culture compared to other states here in the US. And I find it really interesting being an outsider and seeing what it's like to be in that atmosphere and setting as a hockey player, especially in the high school scene, because it compares to nothing else, especially here in New England.
Yeah, definitely. I remember like they call it the tourney. I'm sure the other Minnesota gals have chatted with you about this, and you're familiar because you're a hockey fan, hockey player. I still to this day cannot fathom that a high school hockey tournament sells out the NHL size
Oh,
Excel Center. Like, I think it's the coolest thing. And I think the best part is, like, I don't know the number offhand, but it's some crazy number, the amount of NHL hockey players who played Minnesota high school hockey. Like, it is so competitive. I would have given anything for, like, my high school in Illinois to have that. It's awesome. I definitely envy it.
yeah, no, it's just really cool, and I think I compare it to college hockey here in New England is huge. Like the Hockey's
Mhm.
championship at the TD Garden's like the coolest event ever, the Bean Pot, and that's what I kind of compare it. But for Minnesota, it's high school hockey, and I just find it so cool, and especially at that young of an age, going to an NHL rink and playing in that setting, it must be just a memory you can't forget.
Yeah, exactly. All my teammates, especially like whenever I talked about it with Taylor Williamson, because she had I think she won a couple state championships. She was like, "Yeah, the tourney," and I went one year and I was like, "What is this?" I could not believe it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Now, going back to your college hockey career, you played your final collegiate game against Wisconsin in the NCAA championship. Talk about the emotions you were feeling after that game, not only losing the national championship, but knowing that was your final college hockey game.
Yeah, I was so sad. Um, I was sad, and I think even if we had won, the sadness would have hit me like a week or two later, realizing like my Minnesota hockey career was over. But that was a tough loss because it was a great game. I thought we gave it our all. Wisconsin played amazing. I will give credit where credit's due. They were so solid. Campbell is one of the best goaltenders I've ever gone up against. I think in the moment I was like really sad and I was distraught, if you will, like couldn't believe we lost. But then, like, as time went on and the sun rose the next day, like, life goes on. Hockey is not the be all end all. I look at, like, who I am now and, like, where I am, what I'm doing with my life in comparison to, like, that sad, brief moment. And it's okay when I think about it big picture. But yeah, like, right immediately, like, the days following, I was very, very sad for the way it ended. But that team was one of my favorite teams. I think that might have been like my favorite team to play with my senior year. So we still had a good spring. It was fun.
Yeah, what was your favorite memory with the Minnesota Gophers in your entire college hockey, I guess, experience?
Whoa. Okay, this is a difficult question. Obviously, my freshman year, winning the national championship with those girls, like, that's bar none, like, the best moment, the best experience. But even though we didn't win my senior year, I felt like that team. There was really something special about that team. Like, we were so close, and I feel like Kelly Panic coming back, and adding, like, becoming an addition to the class of 2019. She, like, fit right in. I thought it was really great. We were really close, a really, really close class that year. Um, and so I feel like, though it didn't end the way we wanted, it was that whole year was just one of my favorite experiences. It was really fun.
Yeah, what was it like to play with Amanda Kessel, especially since she was probably one of the most recognizable women's hockey players in the country? And just talk about getting the chance to play with her, and what was she like off the ice as well?
Yeah, Amanda is one of the coolest people I've ever met. She's so, like, down to earth, really easy to chat with. Um, I think being the 17, 18-year-old I was, I was almost like starstruck. I was like, oh my gosh, Amanda's my teammate. But then obviously I got used to it. She's really down to earth. And yeah, it was just great. She's one of the best players I've ever skated with. She's so fast, and yeah, her vision on the ice is crazy, and she's really good at stick handling. That's for sure. She would always be doing some stick handling drills after practice, and I just like to watch. She's really great to learn from.
Now, have you ever been back to Minnesota, and what's your thoughts on the team now? Because watching them this season, Taylor Heisey is definitely making a case that she's the Patty Kazmaier Award winner for this year. It's just been so awesome to watch her. What's your thoughts on the team so far, and have you ever been back to the U?
So I have not been back to the U since January. So literally, I haven't been in Minnesota in over a year. I'm back here in Chicago. Um, In terms of this year's team, I follow when I can. I have a soft spot for Abby Murphy. She is a Chicago Mission girl. She's a freshman. She actually plays on the same line as Heisey and Odin. So I usually follow on Twitter. If I can watch the games, I'll watch them. I saw this weekend they had a great 3-game series with St. Cloud. Heisey and Murphy had some goals. Odin had an assist. I think that whole team is super solid. It's a bummer with the pandemic. I don't really know. I haven't been following what the NCAA is doing in terms of, like, is this season going to be a playoff season? Is it just going to be for the players to have games to compete with? Um, but yeah, Taylor Heisey is, again, one of the best forwards I've seen. She's so strong. She's got a big presence on the ice. She's like, I think I'm 5'8". I think she's like 5'10". Um, she and Abby Murphy I watch very closely, and then that decor, Olivia, Gracie, Crystalline, Emily, those are my girls. I like watching them too. I think it's really fun, now being almost 2 years removed, to see, like, their growth and what the team's doing. So definitely fun. That team's really outstanding. I hope all those seniors can do a fifth year and get a real season though.
Yeah, right. I haven't really been paying attention to what the WCHA is doing, but I know hockey's they're planning to have a playoffs. I think it's just a one-game playoff series, and like everyone makes it just because of the uneven number of games because of COVID. So I'm as a fan, I like it just because it means hockey, and I think the players deserve to play as much games as they possibly can. So hopefully, a playoff does happen and a championship is awarded at the end of March. That's just my hope. I think all those
Yeah.
players deserve it, and I think it'll be probably the hardest championship to win because of what you have to do with all the COVID-19 restrictions.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. We'll see. I mean, I know Greta, my sister, like I said, she took a gap year. The Ivy League canceled, so, like, the poor Ivy League players didn't even have, like, the opportunity to compete.
Yeah, definitely. That sucks. I felt bad for those seniors, especially since what if they don't have the opportunity to go back to college hockey?
Right.
That's what I felt. That's who I felt bad for the most.
Yeah.
But no, Taylor Heisey is incredible. I would not be surprised if she makes the U.S. Olympic team in 2022. She's just that good.
Yeah, she's so outstanding. She's great.
We are now in the non-hockey segment of the podcast where I ask you some non-hockey questions. My first question to you is, what is your favorite type of music to listen to?
Oh, okay. So I feel like I should say country because like I lived in Minnesota for 4+ years, but I really like pop, R&B, definitely some of my favorite music. I also like electronic though. So kind of three answers there, but I
Yeah,
love like dance music, going to concerts, that type of thing.
I'm a big EDM guy myself. I like
hmm
Kygo, Martin Garrix. So who's your go-to like pop artist, I guess?
Mm, my go-to pop artist. Okay, I normally wouldn't say this, but Miley Cyrus just released a new album and I'm obsessed with it. So right now it's Miley Cyrus. Soft spot for Justin Bieber. I think he's great.
Yeah.
Mm, I know those are pretty basic, but
No, I like JB.
they just happened to release music in the past like two
Yeah.
weeks. That's so good.
No, I'm a big fan of JB. I'm not afraid to admit it. His new song is great, by the way. That Anyone song they just released, it's great.
Yes, it's outstanding.
So, next non-hockey question is, what is your favorite TV show to binge watch?
Okay, I have to say Bridgerton on Netflix right now. It's everyone's talking about it. It is so good. I'm a hopeless romantic. All my friends will tell you that, all my teammates. I watched it with my little sister this weekend and we literally binge watched it. It was 8 episodes. I need a second season to come out. It was so good.
What I've been watching recently is a lot of comedy, like this TV show called Community. It's with Joel McHale. It's pretty funny, so that's kind of what I've been
Ooh,
up
I'll
to.
have to add it to the list.
Yeah, I have to add that Bridgerton series to the list. I might enjoy that. Now, you seem like a very nice person, but what is your biggest pet peeve?
Oh man. Okay, my biggest pet peeve. What do I what is my biggest pet peeve? Hmm. Okay, I'm gonna reference Katie Robinson, my former D partner. She's out playing in Finland now. But her and she's a little more extreme than me, but I hate when people chew gum with their mouth open. Like I hate when people like clack in their gum. It really bothers me. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
I can definitely see that, but for me, it's probably slow drivers. When you're from
Oh yeah,
the
true.
New England area, you get a lot of them, and it can be pretty annoying to say the least. So yeah, that's probably my biggest pet peeve.
Totally.
Now, you obviously have had the best style with the Minnesota Gophers these past 4 years when you played. Besides yourself, who had the best style on the team?
Huh, the best style. Okay, I think Patty Marshall. She was my D partner my senior year. She's got really good style. She did the black cage like me. Can't go wrong with the black cage. Um, I also think Hannah Brandt though. She rocks the bubble, so she has really good style too.
Now, back to some hockey questions. My first one is, what should be done to help grow college hockey, or specifically just women's hockey? Because I know the NWHL is going to broadcast some of their games on NBC, and the PWHPA has done a fantastic job trying to promote women's hockey. What do you think should be done, though, from a media perspective and from a fan perspective to grow the sport even more?
Hmm. So, it's such a tough question because from a media perspective, there is so much to be done. I think it's definitely like improved since I've been a youth hockey skater. I think there's a lot of room still need to make be made up. Or I don't know what the correct verbiage is there, but I feel like the biggest thing is like you see Kendall Coyne right now. She'll pop in on the NHL Network from time to time. That is a huge deal that we have a successful Olympic athlete, Patty Kaz, like someone who lives, breathes hockey out there representing us. I think that's a huge thing. We need to get more female hockey athletes in the media presence to speak for us. Um, I think what you mentioned with the NWHL and the PWHPA, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next, I would say, like 1 to 3 years with both those organizations. If they, can come to an agreement and merge, I think ultimately that's what needs to happen. I think what the PWHPA is doing is really great to try to form a little bit more of a competitive league. That being said, I don't have a ton of knowledge on the NWHL, so I can't really speak for it. I think any opportunity for girls to continue playing in a competitive way where we can make a living off of it is going to be great. Ultimately, a lot of it has to do with media presence, but I think this is just my personal opinion, the NHL is going to need to do something larger in terms of like a funding standpoint. They're going to need to step up and come to terms with trying to figure out some sort of agreement. But again, I don't know what that looks like in terms of NWHL versus PWHPA. I think ultimately they will need to come together and then present a case to the NHL and create some sort of competitive league.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and I hope I can play a small role with this podcast. I know it's a smaller platform, but getting players on like yourself and other female athletes to talk about their college hockey experience, I hope gets the word out for just how incredible you guys are, and hopefully just grows the sport a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I love your podcast. I love what you're doing. So I was honored that you asked me to be on it.
Now, what advice would you give a younger player trying to make D1 college hockey? I know you've been through the process yourself. You've seen your siblings go through the process as well. What advice would you give a younger player in that process right now?
I would say so. A couple different things. I would say the first thing is as whether it's guys or girls. I think guys it's starting even earlier, but I know when I was playing at the Mission, it's easy to be distracted when you go on these tournaments into Canada or out east to see the scouts, the college hockey scouts in the bleachers, whatever you want to call it, on the glass. You see their logo on their shirt. It's easy to get distracted and like get in your own head and change the way you play. I don't do that. try as your best, the best you can, not to focus on the people who are in the crowd and just focus who you're on the ice with and what you need to do for your teammates to win whatever game it is. So the first thing, and I would say the second thing is you can't compare yourself to others. There are going to be a lot of your teammates who might get there's different NCAA rules right now, but they might get those emails with like, fill out your email. Yeah, women's hockey wants to invite you to this, or Boston College wants you to send this email questionnaire. There's going to be a lot of girls who will get those right away, and maybe some won't. And then for the girls that do receive a ton of recruitment and a ton of offers, whether it's full ride offers, partial offers, I would say please be humble. I think growing up, I was lucky having older brothers and a sister who were very humble. So I knew at the Mission, everyone was going to have a different path. Not everyone was going to have a path like mine. So to make sure you remain humble in the recruiting process. And then the last thing is everyone has their own path. So wherever you end up is going to be, what's meant for you.
Now, what should I do better as an interviewer to improve and make this podcast better?
Oh, I think you're doing a great job. You asked all the right questions. I like that your podcast has a diverse player pool. It's not just girl hockey players. You have guy hockey players, different levels, D1, D2, D3. I think you're doing great, and I thank you for having me on here and helping grow the game.
Well, is there any shout outs you'd like to give to any of your former teammates, family members, or anyone else you might know?
Yeah, I guess shout out to all the Minnesota girls. They are the best. Those are my teammates for life. The Minnesota coaching staff, and then obviously my little sister. I'm so excited to see her, start her whole season next year. Hopefully, it will be better. I'm hopeful that it will with the vaccine, and that she can have a real senior year. So yeah, shout out. Those would be my basic shout outs.
Well, I hope the season for her starts off as well, and hopefully by this fall things will be somewhat normal. That's, I think, everyone's hope. But I appreciate you coming on, Sophie. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It means so much to myself and to the podcast. I wish you nothing but the best moving forward. Take care and stay safe. And I just want to let you know you're one of my favorite players to watch with the Gophers, and you're just an incredible person and player. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and coming on.
Yeah, thank you. It was so fun. Hope you have a good rest of your day, and hope the podcast keeps growing.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Hopefully everything's well with yourself.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.